It's an honor to meet you today. So I'm very interested in international organization. So I hope to listen your ma'am's experience. So what was the most memorable affair when you worked at the United Nations?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there are many, but one of the I have to think about this for a longer time actually. But one of the things that pops to mind is when I was working in Papua New Guinea. One of the areas we worked on was that of witchcraft, because people there believed that there were witches who were practicing black magic and putting death on people. And talking to some of the victims of those crimes, I think was very touching, because it was, again, this thing about what's culture and what's human rights, but also trying to explain to people who have a completely different world view and a completely different view of what the world is, that, you know, these practices are not acceptable even in your little village, and they really were people with very very limited understanding of why you could not just go and lynch someone who had practiced this black magic. But then trying to also get other actors involved, so you have some development. So a lot of times, for example, these allegations of witchcraft came about because a young person died or because something happened. So you try to get some healthcare into the village or some explanations for why these things happen, so that it's not explained by witchcraft, for example. That's one of the memorable things that happened. But another story that pops to mind, I'll be very quick because there are many questions, but one of the things, when I worked in East Timor, I worked with a lot of young human rights officers. This was their first job. They themselves had gone through a very serious period. Many of them were refugees themselves. They'd lived in camps. Even when they were working for us in the beginning, they were living in camps, and then they moved out and as the country developed. But one of the people I worked with, he was a young man, and as a child, or as a teenager, I think, he was participating in a funeral of a young man who had been shot by police, the Indonesian police. Indonesia then occupied East Timor. And he was in a march, and all these marchers were walking to the cemetery with the dead body, and all of a sudden the police opened fire on the whole procession. It later became known as the Santa Cruz Massacre, when hundreds of peaceful mourners were shot. But what was fantastic about his story, when he told about it, and he was there, and he was almost killed, but he talked about how he survived. And he said, me and a group of my friends, we were kids, so we ran down this random street trying to get away from the police, and towards us come, you know, a group of 5 Indonesian military, and we all think like, oh, I'm not going to say the word, but it's over now. And all of a sudden one of the military guys goes, run that way, run that way. And he was basically telling these young people how to get how to get away. And I think the story is so powerful because it turns upside down what your white and black notions are. So just because someone wears a uniform, or just because someone is on the wrong side or in the wrong position, it doesn't mean they can't be a human rights defender at a particular moment in time. And I think that humanity is something that's really important to keep in mind. So I think that's very memorable.
Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you.